The dance of midnight. Miloš and his best friend, Petar, had spent the evening drinking at a small cafe in Novi Sad. A challenge between friends, nothing more. People online had been sharing stories about a woman dressed in white, dancing alone in the middle of the street at night. Some claimed she carried a knife. Others swore she would chase anyone who watched for too long. Petar had laughed it off. "Come on, man. It's just some crazy lady or a prank. Let's go see if she's real." Miloš hesitated, but the alcohol in his system made him braver than usual. "All right," he agreed, "but if I get stabbed, I'm haunting you." They walked toward the old part of town, where the legend had been reported most often. The streets were eerily empty, the glow of the streetlights barely illuminating the cracked pavement. The further they walked, the quieter it became. No cars, no people. Just the occasional gust of wind rattling an old metal sign. Then they saw her. At the end of a narrow alley, beneath the flickering glow of a dying street lamp, a woman in a tattered white dress swayed to an invisible rhythm. Her arms moved gracefully, her fingers twisting in odd shapes. Her head tilted back as if she were lost in a trance. Her long, unkempt hair cascaded down her back, and her feet glided over the pavement in an unnatural way. Miloš felt a shiver crawl up his spine. "Okay, we saw her. Let's go," he whispered, nudging Petar's arm. But Petar grinned. "Not yet. Let's see if she notices us." Before Miloš could stop him, Petar picked up a small rock and tossed it down the alley. It clattered against the pavement, breaking the silence. The woman froze mid-dance. Her head snapped downward, her body stiff. For a long, dreadful moment, she didn't move. Then, she turned. Slowly, impossibly, her head twisted. Not her body, just her head, until she was facing them. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, glowed under the street lamp. A grotesque grin spread across her face, stretching too far, as if her skin barely contained her skull. And in her right hand, gleaming under the dim light, was a knife. Miloš grabbed Petar's sleeve. "Run!" They turned and bolted down the street, their footsteps pounding against the pavement. Miloš didn't dare look back, but he heard it. The rapid clicking of feet chasing them. Faster than any human should be able to move. A horrifying, inhuman giggle filled the air. Miloš's chest burned as he pushed himself forward. He could hear Petar gasping beside him, struggling to keep up. They cut through an alley, then another, twisting through the darkened city streets. And then, silence. Miloš stopped, pressing his back against a wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Petar hunched over beside him, hands on his knees. Did we lose her?" Petar panted. Miloš hesitated, then slowly peeked around the corner. The street was empty. The woman was gone. Relief flooded him, and he exhaled a shaky laugh. "Holy shit, man! That was—" A shadow moved. Miloš barely had time to react before she was there, inches from his face. The grin was wider now, stretching unnaturally across her face. Her pupils had vanished, leaving only the whites of her eyes. And then she danced. Right in front of them, her body moved in that same hypnotic, impossible rhythm. Her feet barely touched the ground. Her arms twisted and swayed like they were boneless. The knife twirled between her fingers. Miloš wanted to run. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't move. His legs refused to obey him. The woman's dancing slowed. Her head tilted. Then, ever so slowly, she raised a single finger to her lips. Shh. Darkness swallowed them. The next morning. When Miloš opened his eyes, he was lying in the middle of the street. The sun was rising, casting a golden glow over the city. His head throbbed, and his body ached, as if he had run for hours. Petar lay beside him, unmoving. "Petar!" Miloš scrambled to his friend, shaking him. Petar's eyes shot open, wide with terror. "She was here," he whispered. "She was here all night." Miloš swallowed hard, looking around. The streets were normal again. People were walking, cars were driving by, oblivious to the nightmare that had unfolded just hours before. No sign of the woman, no knife, no trace of the horrors they had seen. But when Milos looked down at his arm, his breath caught in his throat. Etched into his skin, as if scratched by a knife, were two words: "Keep dancing."